Hi, I'm Liina Laas, activist, investor, mother. I'm from Estonia, the country that has given the world more unicorns per capita than any other. But it's also the nation with the highest gender pay gap in Europe. Though everything has been improving over the years, women everywhere are still getting a rough deal. Lower salaries, less investment. On this show, I talk with powerful people, women and men, about diversity and equality. Getting an insight to their stories and exploring what a better deal for women looks like. Starting the conversation is important. When women do better, we all do better. Join us and let's discuss how to build a more inclusive world for everyone. Hello everyone, I'm Liina and this is my show, The Better Deal. In today's show, we talk about gender diversity, discrimination, investments, and everything in between. And joining me in the first episode of this series is my very good friend, Patrick Tsang, Chairman of Tsangs Group. Hello, Patrick.
Hey, Liina. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and also always good to see you. It's been a long while since we saw each other physically. Very excited to be on your new show.
Indeed, it has been a while. So Patrick, why don't we talk about the Tsangs Group? You've recently had a lot of success with one of your investments, Fubo TV. I believe it grew 250 times for you. So can you tell us a little bit about how you work, what you invest in, and what's the history of the firm?
Sure. So Tsangs Group is a fourth generation single family office. We're based out of Hong Kong. We have offices in London, Shenzhen, and Beijing. So we're very China focused, but we do investments all over the place, all over the world, globally. We evolved from a real estate family office. Now we focus mainly on technology. So we typically invest into early stage ventures. We open up our global network of investors. We help the entrepreneurs to grow, bring them from North America, Europe to China, or invest into Chinese companies, bringing them to the West, turn it global, and then we list the companies either in the US or in Hong Kong. That's our main business. The sectors, we do everything from AI to blockchain to clean tech to digital animation, media, all kinds of TMT. And we also do some strategic advisory where we help Chinese companies go west to do cross-border M&A. And then we also help Western companies enter the Chinese market. And we invested into a number of different companies over the years. And one of them, like you just mentioned, Fubo TV did extremely well. We were very fortunate to be part of it. Just before lockdown, we'd been able to help to get the deal done. And we successfully listed it in the New York Stock Exchange in October 2020, which is just 6-7 months ago. And now we're mainly focusing on SPACs and US market for equities and also some blockchain fintech projects and also some projects in China for the time being.
Thank you, Patrick, for sharing. That sounds great. Also, one of the big reasons why I wanted to talk about Tsangs Group is that you have a very big focus on SDG 5, which is gender diversity. And you have a very, very big part of your team are women, which in the investment industry is quite rare. Usually women are really in the minority. So could you please talk us through how that kind of came to be? And have you seen any changes within the team since you've had more women in?
So that's a great question, Liina. I think, first of all, I would like to say that, diversity, not just, gender, sex, religion, all these kind of things, as a human being, our human nature is always to spot differences and to pick on these differences. And that's why the world's so polarized now. Ultimately, I believe that everyone is the same. We all share similar values in terms of time, love, family, success, career, things that we should be doing for the community and the planet. So, but things like greed, anger, all the negative stuff, that's what helps us to become, worse people. And the trick to life, in my opinion, is to try to reduce that negativity as much as possible. And, I keep saying this quite a lot, actually, sometimes on social media. I personally don't think men and women are equal. And I don't mean that in a bad light, and that might sound a bit controversial, but when we choose to employ people, I don't really look at, oh, Liina's a woman, I'm going to hire her because we want to get the numbers up. We hire people because of merit. And I think that's just how the world should be working, which is there shouldn't be a prejudice or a handicap towards somebody just because he or she looks different, they act different, they look different. They should be at least have the chance of the interview or a point of meeting so that we can at least hear the side of the story, so that that person pitches to us and say, look, I can do the job, and I can do the job than somebody else, whether they are white, black, yellow, orange, purple, and whether they are a man or a woman. And we didn't intend to say, oh, we have to have X number of females in the company. I think what's been interesting is that as a result of that, it's become very, I believe that, the wisdom of crowds. I think it's important that you do have females. I think it's important to have older people in the company. I think it's also very important to have younger people in the company, because you need a true cross-section of the world, of the community, that is then reflected in your own company. And then you get the opinions of each and every single person in your company. And that will give you a more all-rounded view and decision-making process to make your decisions more efficient and more effective. So I would say it's more, there's a lot of questions to talk about regarding like diversity, regarding gender. But we didn't set out to say we have to sustain SDG 5. It's just once we've got there, then we realize that actually we think that our thought process, the way we think about things, the way we exchange and talk about things is better, because men have some qualities better than women, and then women have other qualities better than men, such as sympathy, empathy, thinking about things, multitasking. And I think you need to have a good balance between men and women in your team to get the best possible results.
Thank you, Patrick. That's really insightful, and I completely agree with you. And now I also see that discrimination is the same. It's the same for gender, it's the same for race, it's the same with people with disabilities. It's not fair in any case, and it usually hurts, and it happens in the same way. So for you as well, from your personal experience, you grew up in Ireland during the Troubles. So tell us a little bit about that and how that has affected you in your future life.
Sure. It's a great question. It's quite very personal, dear to me. I grew up in Belfast, Northern Ireland. So in the late 70s, 80s, I went to a public school in my early years, and then I went to like a private school a bit later. Interesting enough, it was an interesting period, because during that time, like you say, there were the Troubles, there was like bombs, the IRA, all the different issues. And obviously my parents and myself, we weren't religious or any kind of way. And we didn't really understand, what was really happening and why it was happening. So, I think in life, there's good and there's bad. So there isn't thing that is perfect, and there isn't something that is the worst. It just depends on your perspective and how you view things. So on one hand, we got subject to racism because we didn't look white or Irish. But then at the same time, the blessing to that is because we look Chinese, it meant that we didn't get any prejudice because, are you Roman Catholic or are you Protestant? We're just saying, look, we're not even Irish, you know what I mean? So at least that way, we didn't get into any kind of trouble that way. But obviously, when I was growing up, I was subject to a lot of name calling, racist abuse. And as you get a bit older, you then realize that, it makes you insecure. It makes you feel lonely. It makes you feel that you don't belong. And you keep questioning yourself, is it me? Am I wrong? Why am I different? Why can't I fit in? And, as a kid, you want to always fit in. But, there's two ways of dealing with that. One is you face the problem head on, or you crawl into a little ball and affect for the rest of your life. It made me very determined and driven to prove to people that me being different, I can do things just as well as you, or even better. So that's where my motivation and drive comes from to succeed. And it's got to, I guess, quite an extreme level now that I just keep on going. So that's that part. But the sad part of all this is that with the recent events such as Black Lives Matter, this whole Asian hate things going on in Asia, Brexit, a lot of this nationalist movement. I thought that the world has improved. It's got better. We live in a much more multicultural world, a smaller world in some parts because of globalization. But it's so sad to see that we've gone full circle, and it's actually got worse than when I was growing up. I thought we had saw a lot of the end of all this bad racism, but actually it's actually got worse. People are still very ignorant and, I guess caveman, in the sense that, there shouldn't be racism in the world. There shouldn't be sexism in the world, but we still have it. I guess all we can do is to, I think we were talking offline in terms of trying to do little things that cause little, small steps, and, small steps over time help to create, a bigger effect. In one of my favorite movies called Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, we talk about, if you drop a pebble in the pond, soon the ripples will reach the rest of the pond. So I believe that you and I, we might not be able to change the world just on our own, but if we're able to make more noise, talk more, then hopefully we can eradicate as much of this prejudice as much as we can.
Absolutely. And I also agree with you that it seems that recently things are not getting better in terms of this hate to groups that are singled out. It seems to be getting worse. And a lot of that, I guess, is due to we have social media and everyone now has a voice, which is great on one hand, but on the other hand, it also gives way for a lot of hate to sort of spread faster, which is really, really sad. So that's a great insights you're sharing with us. Lovely to hear that. But let's move on to the more sort of gender topic. So Tsangs Group has a lot of women working in the team, which is great. And I agree with you in the sense that we should be hiring people on merit. And this is what I also was always, I agree with that thinking as a young woman when I started my career. I thought, all the doors are open, we are all equal. And then at some point you see that for some reason it's just not true. So where do you think that happens, and sort of how can we take faster steps to solve this?
To be honest, I don't think there are fast steps. I think it needs to be, in fact, it needs to be slow steps, and it's not because I'm not in the same category where I want things to speed up. I'm actually a very impatient person in terms of results, but I feel that there needs to be change, and change only happens when, a lot of this like racism, sexism stuff, it's all down to from a young age, where young kids from schools, their peers, their parents, their upbringing, their environment, and that basically sets people in their way. And even myself for that matter. And I'm not saying I'm racist or sexist in any way, but in terms of, your parents and your school and your friends, they affect you of how you think. And it takes a long time. It's taken me a very long time to unlearn a lot of the things that I think that I shouldn't be believing in or I shouldn't be doing. And as a result of that, I think the number one thing which I'm very passionate about, I think is the key to changing anything, especially in such a very important topic like this, is education. So, I mean, I don't know what the grand plan is of what we need to do in terms of this diversification, but definitely we need a plan in terms of how we educate the kids, how schools, the environment bring up kids. Because I read somewhere, I'm not sure when, but it talks about like boys and girls when they reach 4 and 5, even the girls and the boys think that they're equal at the age of 4 or 5. But once they reach the age of 6, 7, 8, I'm not sure exactly how the study was, but it basically, to cut a long story short, is that the boys and the girls feel that at that age, the boys are more superior than the girls. And I don't know if that's an evolution thing, or is it a society thing, or is it just education? But even from that age, once you see that gap, the boy feels that he is more superior than the girl, right? And it's things like that that needs to change, and that takes time, and it takes generations to change, because you can't just stop somebody who's 35, 40 to just suddenly not believe in the stuff that he or she has been accustomed to for the last 30, 40 years. It's just the way that I've been using a knife and fork for 30 years. Just to tell me to stop using it is very difficult. So, and that's just the norm. So I believe that there are a lot of injustices all across the workplace and at home and outside in society, and we need to make changes. But we need people like yourself to, you need to put in blood, sweat, tears to be able to find like-minded people to affect such change. I think education is key.
Powerful stuff, Patrick. Thank you for that. I think education is definitely is the key here, and hopefully we will see a very different world thanks to the steps we are all taking now. Now, of course, COVID has taken a lot of kids away from schools, which is it's hard for them, definitely, and it's not easy for the parents or teachers either. So this as well might have a very, very different effect. But moving on from the live speak topics, as one agenda that I'm driving very heavily is the equality in investments. So I started looking into how much money women are raising in Europe and globally, and the numbers are shocking. So in Central Eastern Europe in 2020, women only raised 1% of venture capital. And, it would be kind of made sense if there would be 1% of women who are starting businesses, but they're not. So just wanted to ask, how do you see in the investment process? What's the, how many female founders are in your portfolio? If there's not many, why do you think that is? Is there an issue with finding the deal flow, or where might that lie?
Sure, it's a great question. I think it's a very interesting question, because I meet so many female founders or female co-founders in the world, and especially I meet a lot of very smart ladies in the tech and finance industry in Asia, in Europe, especially in North America as well. And it's also quite shocking to me that in fact, I think even the 1% figure is actually quite high. I think it's maybe even lower than that, actually, because to be honest, our portfolio, we don't have that many female founders. We have 1 or 2 projects, and that's definitely not enough to showcase the true investment thesis of what we're looking at. What are the reasons? I think there are a lot of sexist people out there, but I don't think in the investment community, people are just saying, oh, Liina is a female founder, we're not going to invest into her company because she's female. I don't think there's that kind of so adamant and apparent kind of decision-making process that just because you're a woman, they don't invest. There's also a point I wanted to raise. I think we've talked about this in the past. We have a lot of social media which talks about, Miss A, who's the female founder of ABC company, right? And I really don't like it when they say the female founder of this company, right? Because it's a double-edged sword. I think if you end up saying, oh, she's the female founder of ABC, the problem is then you're actually belittling the lady, the founder, who actually made the company into a success. I mean, in my opinion, what is the relevance that she's female? There's no relevance. We look at the results and the merits of what she's achieved as a CEO founder, that she's taken this company to X, right? Rather than, oh, she's a female founder and she's done this. And I find it quite, I think that's the wrong approach to do that. I think it's a given that it's a female founder. It's just that she's been someone who's successful, but it needs to change, and it's a mindset. But it's also quite shocking to see a lot of things like the Me Too campaign and it's still happening, this kind of behavior, and it's probably not going to end anytime soon, because I think this is a long time thing that has been going on for generations, where women have been suppressed. And it's only been, how long has it been since women can actually vote? Actually, not a long time, right? And in a lot of countries still, in the less developed countries, women are still second-class citizens. And this needs to change. And over time, when societies improve in terms of quality of life and livelihood, then people start to think more in terms of how we should be treating each other with more respect and love, which is the most important thing. How do we change this? I think, the culture on Wall Street, in Silicon Valley, it's still very male driven. And this can only be, again, I repeat this, I think we can only change this if through small steps that we see more and more female entrepreneurs, we see more funding, and then it just slowly changes. I don't think we can take massive steps to do this. But funnily enough, I was in Dubai for the last 3 months or so, and the stock exchange in the UAE have decided that you have to have at least one female board member on the listed company. So that's great incentive by the government there. I think NASDAQ have done a lot more in terms of diversity, in terms of race, also in sex. They're trying to do more, which is great. I think that's very forward thinking. And it takes, government, it takes think tanks, it takes schools, it takes companies, it takes influencers and leaders to work together to really come together with ideas. And after the ideas come, you really need to take action and execute before any of these initiatives can actually take effect.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's a tricky question. Like, do we put quotas somewhere or what do we do? And if I think back to when I was younger, I was very strong-minded at the point that I didn't think that we need quotas, that we are the same. If a woman is really good, she will achieve. And then 10 years later, I'm going, it's not quite there. So my personal view is at this point, I think some quotas are needed, just like UAE are doing it. I believe Germany also implemented that there needs to be at least one woman on the board of companies, which, I would say that at first it will feel awkward, but maybe that will eventually bring us to closer to where we want to be. Because there's a lot of studies that show that when you add more women to the team, companies become more successful. And it makes sense that if you only have one group of people, you will only see one point of view. And as we add different people from different backgrounds, races, different age, you start to see a bigger picture, because people can solve problems faster. So, but moving on from there. All really big topics, but I would like to talk more about your new project that you're doing in mentorship. So this is recently being announced that you will start mentoring young people, which was a big sort of move towards inspiring young people. Now with your own podcast as well, which is called Anything is Possible. You started it when sort of COVID hit to inspire people and young people. So what are the next steps? Like, let's say young people join your mentorship program. How does that work, and what's happening next?
Sure. I'm getting on a bit in terms of age. COVID's given me a great opportunity to reflect on what to do next, not just business. So we have a very exciting timetable of events coming up. First of all, I did hip surgery last April, which you know. And during that time, I was like bedridden for 2 or 3 months. I couldn't walk for a long time. So I was on Zoom webinars the whole time. And as you know, the last 18 to 24 months in Hong Kong, we had a very difficult time, tough time, especially for the young people. There was a lot of social unrest, and then COVID hit, and coupling these two things together, no Chinese tourists, the economy was hit badly. And I got a lot of like calls and emails, texts from a lot of young people asking me for advice in terms of what I should be doing. What should I study? Should I go to MBA? Should I do this? Should I do that? And more importantly, is, I believe a lot in energy. So I believe that positive energy breeds positive energy, and I think negativity breeds negativity. So I decided to create a podcast called Anything is Possible, based on my own personal philosophy, thinking that, if you believe in something, try your best, do the best that you can accomplish anything. We've been very lucky. We've been very fortunate to have had a lucky run. So we did 19 episodes for season 1 of the podcast last year. We've done 15 so far for season 2. We're looking to do like 20 plus episodes for season 2, and then we'll move on to season 3 later. And that's changed a lot of my perspective in terms of what we want to do in life, in terms of purpose, legacy, how we should try to be helping people. We're also in the process of setting up our own charity foundation in Hong Kong, which we have 2 objectives. One is education, 2 is youth empowerment. We're also in the process of setting up an incubator in Hong Kong, which we want to try to empower young kids to become entrepreneurs. Hong Kong, we don't really have an entrepreneur mindset. We have an entrepreneurial spirit in terms of making money, because ultimately we either trade stocks or we trade properties. That's why we have the most expensive real estate in the world. But we don't actually have a lot of very entrepreneurial companies from Hong Kong. And this mentorship program was something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And again, I think I mentioned earlier in the interview that ideas is all great, but ideas without executions mean nothing. So this time when we're going to do something, we really actually think and get the things done. So this mentorship program is right now just open to young Hong Kong people. We try to help them through just giving our time and just sharing our views, how we went through our youth, our careers, and how we can help them to maybe, study abroad, to do more in Hong Kong, to find jobs. Should you consider moving to China, to explore, the opportunities in China, and to tell them sort of like what I or some of the other mentors in the group in terms of what we've learned from our mistakes, and hopefully they don't make similar kinds of mistakes, and just sharing. And, when you hang out and exchange more views of young people, then you also feel younger.
Absolutely. That's quite the story. Seems like you've found your purpose during COVID. It's beautiful. Now, one interesting topic for me as well, as you brought up China and Hong Kong. Now, during COVID, we were supposed to travel to Hong Kong and Vietnam, and Asia has always really, really fascinated me. But then, of course, everything went backwards in the beginning of 2020, so we had to cancel. But talking about China and Hong Kong, from the outside looking in, it seems that solving the gender pay gap and issue seems to be going rather better. So what do you think that the differences are between Asia and, let's say, the West, Europe and US? What are people doing differently there?
That's a very interesting question, and I don't want to sound like I'm an expert, but I'll share my 2 cents. I think in my opinion, because of the Cultural Revolution, one of the generations essentially were wiped out. And in China now, the history has been 5,000-6,000 years. And it's always been a society where we listen to society and we have to conform with the norms and the values. Okay. And once the Cultural Revolution happened, a lot of that wisdom, that education was not there anymore. And a new group of people came, and it was sort of like a white piece of paper. Okay. And then China started to open up. And then Deng Xiaoping opened up China to the world in 1978. And in the 80s, then Shenzhen, all these different factories and globalization basically took off. And the interesting thing about all this is that a lot of the traditional, the woman sits at home subservient, was also taken away from it. Now, I always joke with friends that, as a Chinese, our religion is money making. Okay, so we want to make as much money as possible. We want to provide better for our families, but in life it's all about balance. Can you actually make all this money and spend it? What's the point of making all this money and then you don't actually spend and use the money that you make, right? And what if you spend so much time working, you don't spend time with your loved ones? Are you really prioritizing the right thing? So that's been my personal struggle. And I think that's the struggle of a lot of CEOs and business owners, especially in China, who end up becoming very obsessive and passionate about what they're trying to do. Like I've been living a life where no weekends, working, day and night, and I don't treat it as it's work. It's just part of the lifestyle. But sorry to digress a little, but what I see in China is that there is sort of like a Chinese dream where if you work hard and you have this vision and you try and go for it, they don't really discriminate whether you're a man or a woman. They see whether you actually have value. And that's why actually in China, there's actually a lot of women CEOs, a lot of women founders, and a lot of them are very, very, very influential and successful. And we've also seen a lot of women government officials, actually, a lot of women ambassadors for China. And that's been very refreshing, in my opinion. So it does demonstrate that it actually can happen. And just to give you another example, we have all this, this might not be totally relevant, but during COVID, what we've seen is that there's less air travel, there's less pollution, the skies are bluer. It means that there can be change, it can be done, right? Which means that problems, challenges like female gender inequality, racism, disability rights, prejudice, all these kinds of like non-inclusivity issues, they can all be changed, but it needs a combined effort by everyone and who are like-minded and believe in this purpose in order for this to prosper.
So thank you very much, Patrick, for sharing your views. It's been very inspirational, and I think that through sharing stories and different views, this is how we actually get closer to seeing equality in all walks of life, be it different skin color, different disabilities, gender. So I would just like to ask you, what would be the one thing that you would like to give to our audience as advice to women, men, or whoever's watching?
One piece of advice I would like to share with everyone, especially to the ladies, is that life is not fair. And I've always known this from a young age, but life is not fair. It's a fact. You got to basically take action. There's no one else that you can rely on apart from yourself. Doesn't matter if you're rich, young, old, whatever color, sex you are, you can only depend on yourself. And the earlier you know this and appreciate and take action, then there's no one to blame apart from yourself. So just be the best version of yourself and go for it, and never let anyone say you can't do it.
That's beautiful, Patrick. Thank you. This was the first show. I'd like to wrap it up, and a big thanks to Patrick. And I also like to mention that the reason I wanted the first show to be with you as a guest is I remember back when you started your podcast, and I started watching the episodes during COVID, and it really did help. You're kind of, stuck in this weird situation. You can't go outside, well, a little bit, but everything has become different. And seeing the stories of people who I would not have usually met, or maybe not even found them to hear their stories online, was really helpful. So firstly, thank you for doing that. And this is kind of one part how I got to this show as well. When I started speaking up about the fact that women aren't getting enough investment, and there's, somewhere the system is broken, a lot of women started approaching me and saying that it's important that someone is even talking about it. So this was kind of one push. So I'd really like to thank you. So everyone, this is the first show, and thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you, Liina. It's very happy to see you, obviously, but very humbling and privileged that we had a small influence on what you're doing, and very happy to be, very honored actually to be the first guest. I know what you're going through because we started from nothing. The podcast, the Zoom calls, the cameras, the lighting, the preparation, the questions, the guests, inviting people. I mean, there's a lot of work behind it. And, we're not getting paid for it. We're just doing it because we passionately believe in what we're trying to do here. And it's very, very warm for me to hear that, you're doing this, and also that, we try to help you and inspire you in the past. And very happy. It just means that what we've done over the last, how long is it now? Almost 12 months of work. We've achieved a lot. And I'm sure that when you look back in 12 months' time, you're going to be very proud of the stuff that you've been doing.
I hope so too, Patrick. Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you on the next show.